Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about something that, is really absurd, and I find it absurd as someone who cares a lot about these topics and spends great deals of time digging into the data, not just the epidemiology, but metabolic ward studies, studies directly studying what happens when these various foods are loaded in large amounts into the body, what it does to the blood work, what it does in the liver. I care about these things, right? Because again, I'm involved in fitness. There's a history of obesity, a history of heart disease in my family. I have been over 100 pounds overweight before and lost it when younger. And at the age of 47, these things kind of matter to me. Like, I actually care. And I don't care because I'm looking for a dogmatic solution. I care because I don't want these problems personally. I care because I don't want my audience to have these problems. And I'm not selling a product other than just my strength coaching services. Okay, and that doesn't actually involve as much nutrition as you would think. Okay, I'm simply helping people gain their muscle and strength as a coach. So I don't have a financial bias in any of that. I'm simply looking for the best possible answers. And when people make these arguments about saturated fat versus refined sugar, it's like, how can you even make these arguments? Because I see people on both sides. Have you not looked at the data? And it's clear that people haven't, because when they start giving the pro-saturated fat stance, they start talking about Ansel Keys. They don't discuss 2021 metabolic ward studies looking at liver fat and insulin resistance. They ignore that. No, they don't want to look at that. They want to talk about Ansel Keys in the 1970s. Like, science ended for them at that point. All right, the same thing when you see, particularly the pro-plant-based, very high-carb people. Oh, there's no problem. It's only fat in the diet. It's a problem. You can drink all this, Sprite or whatever, Coca-Cola. It's fine. Because there's no fat, and therefore you're not going to gain significant body fat. Okay? All right. And while they are right on the body fat part, they are not right from the health markers. It's absolutely incorrect. Okay? So maybe I'm gonna throw something out here that's wild. There are a million foods I can think of. Okay, maybe that's a slight exaggeration. That are perfectly healthy, that taste great, that don't have large amounts of saturated fat or refined sugar. It is not necessary for us to gorge on either one. And I don't know why this has to be a point of contention. All the available literature repeatedly shows, before we get into metabolic ward stuff, repeatedly shows that two of the things that are generally low in the diets of the healthiest, longest lived people as demographics and as groups, they're low in saturated fat and they're low in refined sugars. Like, this is not a point of contention. That is not a controversial point in any way. Okay, these are both foods that should be moderated. Now, is that to say that a person can't be fit and healthy who eats them? It's not what we're saying. Are you trying to optimize health markers? Are you trying to optimize inflammation in the body? Are you trying to optimize body composition? If that's the case, then yeah, you should keep both of them pretty low. And the data for that is overwhelming. Okay, and it doesn't matter that some people have gotten fit by eating ultra low carb and still eating the saturated fat, or vice versa. Because the people who make those claims don't seem to realize there are just as many extremists on the opposite end from them. Like the carnivore and keto people who say this don't seem to realize how many ultra low fat people out there who drink Coca-Cola exist, who are lean and athletic. Because these groups don't communicate with each other. They just see the other enemy. They don't realize those statistical outliers are just as common. And vice versa. It seems like the people on that other end are going to avoid the topic and not admit that there are people who are legitimately lean who eat saturated fat in significant amounts, right? But the reality is neither is optimal. And the point is, what people fail to realize when they're doing some of these diets are like, well, my blood work is looking good while you're losing weight. And that is what the metabolic ward studies show on these. That when we add either one of these to your diet, even in significant amounts, as long as you're in a calorie deficit, the problems don't manifest. But you're not going to be in a calorie deficit for the next 10 years. You are eventually going to reach a point where you say, okay, I'm going to stop losing weight and I'm going to settle at this current body weight, and you're going to be at isocaloric intakes. All right, and when that happens, you better look at what the data shows. The data generally shows that when we're in an isocaloric situation, this is where we even get into a surplus, because then these both get really bad. Isocaloric conditions, you start looking at studies, they find, yeah, when you add saturated fat to the diet, fatty liver deposits go up. Insulin resistance increases in proportion to the amount. Okay? And whatever you say, well, I don't believe this or that, that's fine, but you better look at these studies, because this is tracking it directly in people and finding it and saying, yep, it occurs right here. Here's when we add this amount. This is exactly what happens. Consistently, repeatedly in humans, when we study a person and we look at their insulin levels, insulin response, fasting glucose, and the amount of fat in their liver, you add it in, it starts going up at calorie maintenance. Same thing with refined fructose. It's just slightly less. So actually, when you compare the two, the fructose is actually slightly less than the saturated fat in the studies I've seen. But that doesn't mean it's good. It just means it's slightly less bad. That's not a good thing. All right? Neither one of these are conducive to metabolic health. Neither one of these serve a beneficial purpose to you other than raw calories. And they're not even the best source of raw calories in either case, because you don't use saturated fat particularly well as a fuel source, even if you're burning fat. That's a whole other topic. We've looked at how rates of fat oxidation go up in the body based upon adding the same number of calories of different types of specific fatty acids. Saturated fats tend to do the worst. Just saying. We come back over to fructose. Yeah, you can't even burn fructose as a fuel source. It has to be converted. And if it's in large amounts, it has to be converted by the liver. Again, this is bad for your metabolic health. Neither one of these are foods that we should be eating in significant quantities. Did I say you can't have a cheat day? Did I tell you to be orthorexic? No. But these are both foods that absolutely should be moderated. And if you were to cut them as low as possible, there would not be any negatives. It's not going to hurt you. And that's the problem with the people who push the other moderation approach, that it's bad if you take them to really low. But it's not. It's a personal choice. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys and gals next time.